ke shaba ga city ke a bona gachi pampiri ke a bona ho print office fela hana jwa le chocolate yona ke for
Total stress.
What do you call stress? I've had arguments. I've had arguments.
Mental health.
Ke lwana le batho motho ke bona sa swipe le dibakeng tse o le nna ke sa ukisisi mo bona o swipe le ba ka bo 2 o'clock o seng
ka account business
for go tsamana tsa ke bonang hore ke ntho mona we tshelang ka ga khalasinyana ha o kata o re thwa hlong e ka yo ga hanyane so ebe ke mothiba ke no but you can't do that.
Sure. It is a tax filing season, and of course, in collaboration with Revenue Services Lesotho, Lesotho Institute of Accountants, and My Money Adventures podcast, we bring you a series that is going to educate you about tax compliance, planning your finances, filing your tax returns, and so much more. Whether you are an individual, a small business owner, a trust, or a company, we have a lot of content that's going to help you understand and appreciate everything tax compliance, but also running your finances in a healthy and productive manner. Hello, fellow trailblazer. Welcome to My Money Adventures podcast. My name is Tukiso TK Ntebe. I am your trusted voice in personal finance, retirement conversations, and entrepreneurship in Lesotho and Southern Africa. Like I mentioned, over the next few episodes, we're going to be talking everything tax compliance, business management, and so much more. So be sure to get your notebook, get your pen, and follow us on all social media platforms because you do not want to miss out on the knowledge we're going to share with you in the next few episodes. My name, like I mentioned, is TK Ntebe, and of course, I am not alone. I have the first guest in today's episode from the Lesotho Institute of Accountants, popularly known as LIA, where we're going to talk about record keeping. So if you're a small business owner or a business owner in particular, we're going to talk about the importance of record keeping. But before we get into that, let me start with introductions. Daddy. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
For people who don't know you, but also being accountant, tell us a bit about who you are, how, where you come from, and what you do professionally.
Okay. TK. Lebitso la ka ke Dingalake Mokotedi. Don't worry, ke Mosotho. Don't be surprised. Ka lebitso la ka. Ke lo ka sompoletseng tate. I am an accountant. I'm an accountant accredited and registered with the Lesotho Institute of Accountants. I have been a practicing member of the Lesotho Institute of Accountants, General Public Accountant, as they are now called, for over 20 years now. So I have been around for quite a while.
For being around for
yes.
2 decades.
2 decades.
2 decades
Absolutely,
ago.
2 decades. Yes.
I love talking to the accountants, the economists, the people in the finance sector, people actually in finance. And as is tradition on this show, this question, if your bank account could speak, what would it say?
Ooh, I didn't think you would ask me that. I watched your previous episodes and I thought I would.
But you should know.
Yeah. My bank account, I think, would say I am fairly disciplined. I'm fairly disciplined as far as issues of finances are concerned. My background as an accountant or as a finance professional pushes me sometimes beyond limits.
Sure.
Sometimes I'm always afraid and say to myself, am I not being too hard on myself?
I was about to ask because I generally think the accountant, they are very hard. They are very quick to say no. So are you going to say, are you hard on yourself?
I am hard on myself. I think I have studied obviously as an accountant. I have lived and worked as an accountant for the past so many years, as I've said, and it is always difficult to try and separate that office life to your home life. So in other words, when you get home, you are tempted to bring along part of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Cutting costs.
Cutting costs and saying, no, you can't have this today. you can only have it in 2 weeks time,
Sure.
and so on, or no, we can't have it this month, we'll budget it for next month. So that's basically what I do. As to whether that happens in the family background is another story.
I think we should invite the family to find out. So
Yes.
when we speak about particularly these small businesses, you know, we always say it's important your business must be registered, it must be licensed, and it must be compliant, I guess. But one of the other things that is the importance of record keeping. So that's a bit about that and how that looks like, how it plays out. Okay. So I have a company, TKO Financial Wellness. Ke reka di microphone, ke reka stock, ke reka ntho tseno kaofela. And the tendency is, ha ke tswa ka shopong, it's very easy for me to nka receipt eno ke e lahla ka dustbin kapo ke e tlohela kae kapo kae. How important are those documents kapo di receipt tseo when it comes to business owners?
Those documents are very important. You have made an example ya hore ha o tswa ka shopong, you are tempted to go sheba receipt eno no e lahlele kwana. O kila bona ha o lo tshela koloi mafura.
Yes.
Bele ha o qeta o e tshela ebe motho a tshelang koloi mafura hore a ko emelle tlasenyana mono no. And sometimes they take a long time before they could come. Sometimes you even think they've forgotten hore ba itse ba tlisa receipt ya hao. But when you are a business person, you need to be disciplined enough to not throw away such receipts, or to have the patience ya udi ML. And the reason why that is because those receipts and invoices form part of what we call the source documents or the primary documents tsa kgwebo. So in other words, how the income statement ke etsa mahlala e se dutse mono no ho sona le the income side, ho sona le the expense side. Those expense sides are built by these receipts. Tsena tseo ke eletsang tsatsi lena hore o ske wa di shoba wa di lahla. Tsena tseo ke eletsang hore motho ha ra go emelle tlasenyana mono no ku lokisetse receipt ke tle ke tsebe hore ke ngolo ditaba tsa ho hantle. O ska ba impatient o ga ke na le meeting ka 11:30 ke tla nne ke e bone. So those documents are very important jalo ka ke se ke boletse, because when you do your income statement, it's a taba fela go sota di categorize. Ka gore mona ke mafura, ke etsa mohlala, mona ke di microphone, mona ke rente, mona ke basebetsi, mona ke telephone, di ntho tseno kaofela tsona. It's a taba ya ho di categorize fela, but at the end of, or when you come to the end of your reporting period, or when the time comes for you to prepare your reports, ditokomane tsona tseo, those receipts and invoices, ke tsona tse hahan that bigger picture. The financial statements will just be a few pages, but what goes behind the scenes, or what has built up those few pages, get those boxes and files of original receipts and invoices. So those are very, very important. Also, let me add to say, particularly for businesses that are audited, when the external audit or the statutory audit, as it is commonly known, comes to pass, the auditor, one of the things to bata di hloka ke tsona ditokomane tseno no tse unfortunately ileng ya ha we fumana ya ba wa e shoba wa e lahla kapa ya ha o tlameha go e emele ya ba ga nna ke tatile ke tlameha hore ke meeting. So I'm glad that we have started with that question, because the filing season is here. The 31st of March, the filing season is going to start from the 1st of April to the 30th of June. It means some people will be regretting, why did I throw away that receipt? Why did I say, shall I give you a receipt? No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And at the end of the day, your financial statements, particularly in this instance, your income statement, high reflect the expenses how ki di film, because really tse ding tsa tsona ha wa di emela kapa tse ding tsa tsona o shubile wa di lahla. So you're not able to get the value that you are actually supposed to be getting from your financial statements.
Sure.
In this particular instance, the income statement.
Sure. Wow. And ke batla re tlo kgutlela back to the income statement in a short bit. O tla tlhalosa hore na why is important na e bolela le eng hape. But I think ntho nngwe that keeps me up at night as a business owner, bohlokwa ba hore I need to keep these source documents like Ocho. And now ha ke kena ka officing ya ka ke pampiri ke rasiti ne se ke sa hopolo. So how can we be efficient in terms of after I collected document eno kapa ke fumana ke emetse ke fumana, what then do I do ka yona? Do I keep it somewhere kapa ke kenya ka le boxing ho fihlela le pile ka kapa how do I go about that?
All right. There are several approaches to it, depending on how big your business is. Your business is. Bigger businesses will have things like, for instance, payment vouchers, which is that document that accompanies the invoice. How do patalwa? It I be bontshitse hore na ke mang a patalwang, o patalwa bokae, o patalwa for eng, and so on. Jwale bile na e bontsha hore you authorize the payment eno ke motho a itseng, ya ba ya patalwa ke motho a itseng. In such instances of fumana hore the payment voucher tse sentse di na le the supporting documents ka mora tsona, they are filed away. Like for instance, isetla bata ba hore na mohlala, when you are a bank business, it means you'll only be having one file e storing ditaba tsa tsa banka ka teng. But when you are a cash and a bank business, ditaba tsa banka o tla bo di etsa bankeng, ditaba tsa cash o tla bo di etsa bankeng. So categorization e se ka bataba ya hore na for instance, the business that you are in. So what we normally do as accountants or as professionals, we assess now business and the things that you are currently doing or the practices that you are currently doing, so that I introduce these systems. And you become impatient to high that jwale ha ka la twa fela o sa re ke etsa ntwe mane ni kutlwa ka tla nkimela atnyane ha ke assessitse hore na business nya mfuta ofeng le hore na your current practices ke difeng ke tla nne ke le wena jwalo hanyane. But maybe the summary of my answer would be di lokela hore di boloka hantle ka mantswe a mang di receipt le invoice tsa kgwebo di a hlomphuwa ke te ke tshwalo di a hlomphuwa because jalo ka se ke boletse at the end of the year RSL ke ena e re emetse hona jwale e tla be batla o tseba gona what is your income, what is your expenses. Ha e batsela eo o haileng di expenses tsa hao ka yona e le shaky ka lebaka la baneneng ha wa boloka di receipt tsa ho hantle, it means bothata bota ba teng. So if le ke batla gore ke emphasize hore ka tsela eo ka di keepang ka yona fela, as long as o ka etsa bonnete ba hore they remain in their original state, tse dintsa tsona out of mana hore enkena ya phushuphushuwa. And the reason why that happens is because tsela yo motho a tla ba di store ka yona. So ha ka bula file mohlomong ya cash expenses, mohlomong ya bank payments, o di agola ka dikgwedi, o di bear in that order ya hore ke tsatsing ena ke o sane ke ha o feta o sane and so on. Ha di le jwalo o so tseba hore o di go ka mantso man, there is a bit of order in your filing.
So
yes,
system yana. Okay,
absolutely.
At the introduction more you are registered, I guess. So today you are here in the capacity of Lesotho Institute of Accountants.
Yes.
How important kapa bohlokwa ba hore o sebetse le di accountant tse ngodisitsweng ka molao giving? And re ba tseba jwang hore ntate Mokotedi o license-uwe ke LIA.
Okay, there are many benefits tsa ho sebetsa le di accountant tse accredited by the Institute of Accountants. One of the benefits ke tsa hore the accountants also Institute of Accountancy they are regulated. The Institute of Accountants is the regulatory body for all accountants and auditors in Lesotho. So that means that means we are guided by the guidelines the Students of Accountants. We also go on continuous professional developments. Ele mo teng re le ka hore re tshogise boya rona teng. Ha o mpotsa tjena ke hopola hore last week the Students of Accountants in organized a marathon on ethics. And ethics are basically the professional behavior of accountants. To say, don't have self-interest, for instance, be confidential, for instance, be objective, and so on. We are here to remind you that your behavior as professional accountants is very, very important. Now, you don't have that on any other accountant or on any other person that calls themselves an accountant. Is he a member of the Lesotho Institute of Accountants? So it is very, very important. How ka etsala hore accountant ya hao mohlala e default on one thing or another? Jalo ka ke se ke tshulu. They are accountable. Somebody will call them in and say, as accountants, re sebetsa dintho tsa rona ka tsela e itseng le itseng le itseng le itseng. Re itshwara ka tsela e itseng le itseng le itseng le itseng le itseng. Ho etsahetse jwang? Then you are able to answer and say hore na ho etsahetse jwang. So that on its own e bolela hore even before we admitted into membership, we are vetted. Ka mantswe a mang ha hore fela particularly as a practicing practitioner as I am, ha o fiti fela hore ke na le qualification e itseng, ke na le dilemo tse kana tsa experience, ha e sale ke ntse ke etsa dibuka tsa batho. You are vetted. Ka mantswe a mang ho tshwanetse o botsebahala hore wa tseba hore na di-financial statements ke eng, wa tseba hore na o entse mohlala ka the invoices and receipts tsa di-mic le metsi le eng kaofela tsona, wa tseba hore na dintho tse nono o di haya kaofela jwalo o di ha o fitlela ba o fitla to a full set of financial statements. Now o lokela hore o fitle jwang. So ka mantswe a mang ha re fokotlelle dintho, re ruteile
re standard
ke yona ntho ke ntse ke le ka hore ke qobe ena ntate ya hore ke se ka tloa ka hla le wa buiba e ka ikakasa fela ha ile hantlante hle re batho ba ruteileng and that are ethical all round. Yes.
So nna mo kotedi hangata re le dikgwebo, whether micro, small, medium enterprises all the way to big corporates, ha re nahana ka the accounting service kana ha ke tlamo etsa dibuka, ke tlamo prepare the financial statements, I need to have an accountant exercise le yona since ke na price or hey e tlo ja di profit in science business since ke tlamo patala ntho eno. All right, but how from a LIA perspective bohlokwa o sentse o buile bohlokwa bo nono, how do we kapo o ka reng e tshintsha mindset ya Basotho le di business owner ga hore ba le bona le di partner so that ha ke tshabe ho kenya tjhelete ka pokothong ke patale service le re fang yona?
Okay, one of the things tse re di rutwang jalo ka ke se ke buile ka taba ya di ethics is to not overcharge or undercharge clients. So ka mantswe a mang taba ya charging of clients ke nngwe ya ditaba tsa bohlokwa ya hore do not overcharge clients, because jalo ka o so boletse hore batho ba njolo ba tla ba le baratshi di tse re hloka di accountant fela he di accountant tsena dia re tsipa ka ntle ka monana. But I wish to confirm today ke nnete the pricing will differ from one practitioner to another. But we are not bad. I mean, we do books for people ha ke batlo ke ba mention le ka di industry tse o ba leng ho tsona, but that you cannot believe hore re ka ba etsa dinnye go motho o bona e le motho yeo ke keng wa bona ka ke motho wa khobe ka lokalo fela e be ke ntse ke mo thusa ka taba ya ho mo etsa dibuka. So ke katela ntate ka hore ke re sithuwing we are here as your accountants, and our main mandate ke ho leka hore re le thuse hore dibuka di be teng mo le kgetho ke ena o teng jalo ka o so tshulo le yana o tla ba emetse share high. So we are cognizant of such things. That is other than the fact that there is always negotiations. I mean, we talk about in business there is negotiation. So we talk about these things. We agree on these things. And when we think we can't agree, we say, okay, fine, sorry, I can't help you, but maybe the guy next door may be able to help you. Yes.
So all I put in Leona is back to the source documents, right? How holo the micro small businesses, we tend to ke tukiso ntebe ke na la account tsa ka tse ke na la account ya ka personally TKO financial wellness ke business e register we ina la account tsa teng le account ya teng, right? So neng tukiso hana chelete TKO ina le chelete, neng TKO hana chelete tukiso hana chelete. So how important is it to separate the two individuals. One is a natural person, one is a legal entity. Why is it important kapa bohlokwa ba ho arola di personal finance le tsa business finance giving?
It is very, very important to separate those. And the reason why you have said, or the reason precisely is because what you have already alluded to. Ya hore Tukison Tebo, le TKO consultancies are two legally separate persons. And therefore, by all means, the affairs of Tukiso should not interfere much with the affairs of TKO consultancies. Ke se ke ntse mohlala ka taba ya the income statement ya TKO consultancies. Molekgetho o tla ba re ka ga di financial statements tsa TKO consultancy Pty Ltd ke etse mohlala. In the expenses tse teng mono, my expectation as the taxman ke hore those expenses should be expenses that were incurred in deriving income subject to tax. So in other words, any other expense e keneng ka mono ene sa lokela e be kene ka mono kapa e keneng ka mono fela e sa generate income e TKO consultancy etsang, they will disallow that. My colleague will talk about allowable and disallowable expenses at a later stage. But it is very important to and it also it requires a lot of discipline. And you probably advocate for this as a financial advisor. Ya hore pay yourself. I don't know if you do.
No, I do.
I don't know if you do.
I do.
Pay yourself. So that and the reason why that is because the expenses are how. Ha ba tlo re di bone ka hara di expenses tsa kgwebo. Ko re di expenses are how. But how ban take this to an extent ya hore a tsamaya ile reka pampiri ya mosebetsing. Ka lebaka la ba neng o sa tlwaetse haholo. E re ha le thiling ena e tswa monana. Ebe o sa bona dipompo. O sa re dipompo tsenana e re ke dinke. Ebe ha fitha mano sa fitha di patalla. Le tsona ditaba tsenana tsa kgwebo. Kore motho ena ha re le hore a re a emme pampiri ena ko e otella ka thoko ebe di biscuits tsena o totwa di otella ka thoko. Di otellwa nka ile nngwe. Pele nako nye o mphan di receipt invoice tseo ke le accountant. Ke shaba receipt ke a bona gachi. Pampiri ke a bona ho a print office. Fela hana jwale chocolate yona ke for eng.
Total stress.
What do you call stress? I've had arguments. I've had arguments.
Mental health.
Ke lwana le batho motho ke bona sa swipe di bakeng tse o le nna ke sa ukisising bona o swipe di ba ka bo 2 o'clock o seng
ka accountant business
go tsamana tsa ke bonang hore ke ntho mona we tshelang ka ga kgalasenyana ha o kata o re thwa hlong e ka yo ga hanyane so ebe ke mothiba ke no but you can't do that.
Sure.
Is that an expense that has generated income that is subject to tax? And we argue about it, and obviously sometimes we don't agree. But the general principle ke ena eno ya hore expenses that are allowable they are expenses that have generated income that is subject to tax. So tabeno no ya hudi ya rola ihleke taba bohlokwa. And I also need to say it takes a lot of discipline to itwetsa. If it means you have to make 2 trips to town, ulo etsa trip ya dintho tsa mosebetsing, ulo etsa trip ya ntho tsa hae tso ka di etsang ka mora 5, then by all means do that. But it is very important that you separate your personal life expenses with those of the business. Ke se ke bontshitse hore e baka le administration e ngata ke tlonka na go etelele ke ntse ke le ka o sheba okay, so ha ntwena le 500 pampiri le 415 ntwena le 50 rand. So it means 450 kita expense 50 rand e jwale yona kita etsa jwang go ga ke go bona gona e complicate dintho jwang. And remember, the longer I take to do those things it a gukela mane mo ke reng jwale it's a bit more that I will have to charge.
I was about to say that. Ntong hape the tax filing season. I guess that starts kadi once April to the 30th of June. From a discipline perspective, hangata re le batho ba di business, we want to wait until about tax filing season. How important is it to do monthly bookkeeping, like content there? How by the time the filing season, we don't only start mosebetsi kadi 1 tsa June ho thota mo deadline of file like the 30 tsa June. Eventually accountant e burden e molemo wa panic. How important is it to have the discipline, but that process ya ho lokisa dibuka tsa how throughout the year?
It is very important. So boletse taba hore o qeta ka pele. Remember, time waits for no man. Ka di 1 tsa April, it is the beginning of another financial year. So it means how le morao ile hona o tota o qetela tsa up to 31 March. By the time o fileang ka June, on a backlog at 3 months.
3 months, yeah.
So I think it's a train that you keep on chasing, but you can't. So in turn, you save it now. But also, compliance. There is also some value that you get as a business person on having your interim. I'm avoiding the word the management accounts or the periodic amounts. You don't wait until the 31 it's a March. Depending on how big your business is and how big your muscle is to afford an accountant or to afford the service. But every month end, I need to sit down with my accountant and know how my business has gone this past year. So in other words, how high compliance man and hustle.
It's about the business.
On a day-to-day business, on a day-to-day basis, you have decisions to make. And how do you make those decisions? You make those decisions from this interim or management financial statements. Me you tusaka hore hustle mo se fela. E se le taba go fela unka April, May, June, July, August to fitela March 2025 jalo ka March 2025 ke ena etsa o fitha o compiler mo no fela o checka fela go dintho tse mmalwa di a etsa o etsang by mid April or even end of April about so too late. Your return is filed with the taxman. It helps you even for financial planning purposes. For that year of assessment, the taxes are and therefore the installment so there are many benefits that TK that come with not waiting until the end of the financial year, but into doing them. It also both for your business and also for the taxman as well. Yes.
Can I lay a poto that keeps playing in my mind, and I think the community on Facebook balabota as well.
Okay.
But in terms of from a business perspective, kidi businesses defense at more filer because when this assumption ya hore kidi campaigns a whole of it's a filer that more comply. Kidi companies a whole to service and the accountant. Kidi companies a whole to and these management accounts couple performance documents or one of our business in the performance fee.
Okay.
So just as an accountant, hakile so proprietor kapo kile tuki so ki ngola the expenses ka income ya ka buka ntwe non. Do I have to comply? Do I have to file? Do I have to know conversations ka yona kapo is it for certain businesses at different sizes?
It is for all businesses, Ndate. It is for all businesses. Ho sa tsotelle hore na o ngola booking, exercise booking, or you have a network of computers. You store your books on cloud somewhere, so they say. It is your responsibility to comply. So in other words, o sole trader, trading as TKO consultancy, you have an obligation to file your returns. TKO consultancy o etsa mantsibi ha o chaisa from 9 to 5 you are employed somewhere ho sa tsotelle hore na o na le di office tse kgolo ha kae kapo tse nyane ha kae jwalo ka ke se bontshitse ho sa tsotelle hore na o recorda dintho tsa hao motjhini monana kapa o ntso di recorda exercise bookung you have an obligation to file your returns. So in other words, fortunately or unfortunately, once you're in business, this is the part and parcel of being in business. You have to be compliant. You have to do things that sometimes you don't like to do, but you have to do them because you are in business.
I love it. I love it. I think I have one last question before we get to the ad break.
Okay.
In fact, dipedi, but ke tla letsa ele 1 and 2, right? Ya pele ke hore technology is now also here. We're in the era of digitizing everything. Our example is doing a lot of digital transformation. So Filer Online, LIA has webinars. How important is technology in our businesses for compliance purposes? Just the business performance management team. And then the second one, Ola touched on it a bit early on, Kawana, in terms of the initiatives LIA and to educate, to empower, like work at the ethics workshop. What other initiatives are you doing, Lily LIA, to really just help Basotho business owners to comply, and not just comply, because I think compliance is very restrictive. Comply, but also grow and scale businesses. So Yapeleke technology lay some of the initiatives that are over and above the training last week.
Okay. Technology is very important. We cannot deny that technology has caught up with us. A couple of years ago, re fola the tax clearance hore tla hona jwale o fita ho kena maranga monana ebe tla your tax clearance is ready to print, ebe tax clearance is ready to print. So whether we like it or we don't like it, technology is here. But there are benefits. There are a lot of benefits that have come with technology. There are a lot of benefits that have come with technology. And one of the benefits ke benefit eno ya hore in the olden days hore o compile financial statements tsa hao ina le leeto o no dula mo no ka pena le pampiri e bontsho re no 1 + 1 ke 2 man why ntwe re ke 3 ha tsoga bona gona tsena na o so fitla fela o kgetha fela hore a compare di report tsa nako itseng ho tloa kana go itseng ho tla kana go itseng ha o qeta hore enter fela wala dintho tsa o di a hlaga. So in other words, it saves you time and time that you need as a business person to do other things that are important to you, to do other things that generate you money, to focus on other operations so hlokang hore o di etse. So e re tse benefits tse ngata ha o sana di error tse ngata tse tsahalang jalo ka ke se ke tshule hore ha o ka 1 + 5 ya ba ngwana wa kena hore ntate mme o gotle ya ha o khutla mona ha o sa tseba hore hana ne kitse 1 + 5 kapo 1 + mamma. So it means it has reduced even the human error in in our financial statements. So that has brought in hore information e beteng mehleng ya pele no tshwanetse go shebe file mane ne be wa sheba a di gona le report e batang wa sheba ha o etse gona tsena o so fitla o kena mona fela o tlika hanngwe o tlika habedi o tlika ga go tlika kgetlo la bone fela report ha o itsile ka tsela e o batang hore e tswe ka teng. Ha eba report eno batla hore mohlomong o e analyze kapa o e hlaise ka mohlomong di photo kapo di bar chart or di pie chart or whatever, technology se gona hore e o etse tsona dintho tse eno. So other than the fact that there is nothing we can do about technology, the fact that it is here, we might as well embrace it because there's nothing we can do about it. Tabeng ya hao ya rona Lesotho Institute of Accountants na e etsang, there are many benefits that tsa ho ba a member of the Lesotho Institute of Accountants. Ona tjenana the upcoming I was looking at the schedule sa the CPDs I think up to June. 2025. It is packed with a lot of content. It's the accountant molemo. Recently, the Lesotho Institute of Accountants invited human resource personnel. Tsa di business fela Maseru mona. Kore if you're a human resource person, yeah, business fela Maseru mona. You're invited to go there. And there is a person, HR, a specialist on HR. There is a person, lawyer. There is a person on behavior, and so on. So there is a lot of things, or there is a lot of value that the Lesotho Institute of Accountants is distributing. I mean, I will not mention this one. We are here trying to educate Basotho. Hore Basotho ba ske ba tshoswa ke taba enana ya go file di-return, ba ske ba tshoswa ke taba enana ya dipuo tse telele tsa di-accountant, di-standards and so on. We are just here to say these things are doable. I mean, you can do them also, not without us, but maybe without us also. But it's things that you can do yourself.
Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick ad break. And remember, this episode is proudly sponsored by Revenue Services Lesotho in collaboration with Lesotho Institute of Accountants. We will be back very shortly. I hope you're still engaged. For me as a business owner, I am very excited to file my tax returns, not only because I have to comply, but because it gives me insights into what's happening in my business. And one of the key pillars is tax efficiency. So stay tuned. We will be back very shortly. Cheers. And welcome back to the second half of this conversation in partnership with Revenue Services Lesotho and, of course, Lesotho Institute of Accountants, LIA, where we are talking about the importance of record keeping, specifically for business owners ahead of the tax filing season that begins on the 1st of April 2025 all the way up to the 30th of June 2025. So if you have not listened or complied, this is the one part of the conversation that you really need to sit down and understand, because we spoke about the importance of record keeping and how it can benefit you, but also now we get to hear from the tax person, tax man, tax lady, from a tax compliance perspective. So welcome Mema. She's been here before last year. How are you today?
I'm great.
You're great.
Yeah.
You're great. The last time you were on the podcast, it's video 2024, where I asked you, what is your relationship with money?
Yes.
Okay. So last year, like, hey, it's 12 months later. I can now story for another day. But if your bank account could speak today, 2026, March, what would it say?
Wow. Yeah, I had promised to visit you, and I didn't, of course.
Ha!
But I think I did. You were only with us at RSL. I think it was 2 months back.
Yes.
Still talking about the financial aspects. So what I think my bank account would say it's not consistency.
Consistency.
You are not consistent.
You are not consistent.
Yes.
Oh.
Improve on your consistency.
Improve on your consistency.
Yeah, to ensure that you use your finances very well. Yeah, sometimes I try, sometimes I don't know what happens. Things just fall apart. For something else. So I think consistency is still a problem.
Consistency is the problem. So we're gonna help her this year to work on that consistency, because one of the things we need to be consistent about is managing our finances, but also making sure that we are compliant with the relevant tax legislations in the country. So talking about compliance, re di business, re di individual, re di trust, re di ntho tsena kaofela, akere?
Yes.
Bohlokwa ba tax, firstly, tax e patalwa ke bo mang? Let's start there. Ke nahana batho ba bangata ba nahana hore tax ke ntho ya batho ba itseng. So who is actually required to pay tax?
When you look at Income Tax Act, the Section 4 of it, ha e bua ka taba ya hore na ke mang ya tlamehang ho patala lekgetho. Anybody, any person earning income in Lesotho for the year of assessment should ensure that he pays the income tax. So mang le mang a fumanang income ka hare ho naha ya Lesotho re lebeletse hore a etse jwang a patale lekgetho. Ge sa lebale hore even in the Bible it says give Caesar what belongs to Caesar.
Caesar.
So it's not something just came out of nowhere.
Sure.
Ehlile e tswa bebeleng ebile e teng ka hare ho Income Tax Act ya rona. Anybody who earned income for the year of assessment should ensure that he pays the amount of tax due for that financial year.
Give Caesar what is due to
Give
Caesar.
Caesar what is due
So
to Caesar.
I want to be very specific.
Yes.
Like, yeah. So ke bomme ba sebetsang difemeng, bomme ba sebetsang malapeng, bontate ba sebetsang difemeng dijareteng hohle, bomme ba hiruweng mo ba hiruweng teng, batho ba sebetsang RSL, batho ba sebetsang TKO, the photographer, the videographer, the creative, the artist, anybody who has earned an income, they need to pay tax.
They need to ensure that they pay the amount of tax. Due.
Okay.
Yes.
That is due.
Yes.
I guess. So how about income ke fumaneng ke ho tloha bokae? Ha ke fumane 100 randa ke patala lekgetho kapo ke hloka ho fumana 10,000.
It differs because ha fela o ene income, you have to pay tax. So the way the way the system works, ke mane mo itlo sheba hore na o fumane this much as your income for the financial year. And then the calculations, the layer of calculate is there tax due? Kapa ha hona tax due. But it doesn't say how you exempt from income tax. You have this, your 1 rand for this financial year. How much tax is chargeable on the 1 rand? And the system, determine kapa formula determine how much is due. And do you really need to pay? Because this tax credit, when we go deeper into all these calculations, even the demonstrations, where you have to pay this much, but there's, however, for sole traders and the individuals, there's this tax credit. You can take on whatever amount of tax you have to pay. So if you have to pay 1 rand and the 1 rand is within the tax, the non-refundable tax credit, then it says for that financial year, so it just depends on how much you have made for that financial year, such that when you apply the tax credits and you include the non-refundable tax credit, or when you apply the tax rates and then apply the non-refundable tax credit, yes.
The things that you just shared now, but tax, about tax education. Hey, tukiso le mema totliso we learn to set hard tukiso mema totliso hey see what I did there we learn to set hard so ke batla gore tse ding tsa tsona ke re di manolla hanyane just so that we appreciate I guess. So ha re bua ka the financial year re bua ka nako efeng
ke di
26
March today e lo go selama sa gona se a fela ne ka di 31 tsa March re sebedisa selemo sa gona sa mmuso the fiscal year ya mmuso yo re sebedisang ke le gona re selama e re sebedisang ga e sebedisa. So the financial year we are talking about, it starts from 1st of April to 31st March of the following year. So as we are approaching the year end now, by 31st of March 2024-2025. That means we have the filing season period from the 1st of April to the 30th of June.
30th of June.
You have 3 months to ensure that you compile all your records. As Ndade has said, you should keep all the records. So for you to compile all those records and consolidate them so that they become easier for us to interpret as bagafisi. Ke go tloa di-1 tsa April go fitlheletse di-30 tsa June.
So filing season ke di-1 tsa April go fitlhela di-30 tsa June. Financial year the fiscal year ke di-1 tsa April March, di-1 tsa April 2025 go fitlhela di-31 tsa March 2026. Okay. But filing season re tlo fila di-1 tsa March 2024 go fitlhela di-31 tsa March 2025.
That is the 1st of April.
Yes.
2024 to 31st March 2025. Yes.
Okay. So engwe hape ha re bua ka income kapo that income that we have earned. Mehlala ya yona income eo ke efeng?
We have different sources of income. It could be employment income. Let's say you provide service and there's compensation for that service. That means you're earning income for the service that you provide. So whether you're employed, under employment, there are so many types because some people will assume or conclude that overtime is not taxable. It's part of your employment income because there is a relationship between the employer and the employee, and whatever compensation that arises from the relationship, know that it forms part of the employment income. So it could be that overtime payment, leave payments,
Commission,
bonus, if you earn bonuses at your work, that forms part of the employment income for that month. So and it's taxable. Yes.
Income kapa lekeno le kenang ha fela le teng, it forms part of taxable income.
Yes.
It will tax you. So
Employment
man allowance, girlfriend allowance, boyfriend allowance, you need to tax you.
You need to declare that.
You need to declare
all the sources of income.
All the sources of income.
Yes.
Because it brings me to what you just said now. Ka bohlokwa ba ho declare. Bongata ba rona re fumana income,
yes,
whether it's employment income, whether it's property income, ha ona le maline le duplex, business income, but hangata ha re declare, you know. You find that people have disclosed tjhelete ba e fumaneng. Bohlokwa ba ho disclose ke bofeng le hore na how sa disclose, what are the consequences?
Ntle le hore ke molao or we should declare all the sources of income. Ekaba yona employment income, business income, property, or any other. Molao dilo chojwa or any other. That means yes, are willing within these 3 categories. Then you need to declare it. Any other.
Any other.
Yes.
Girlfriend allowance, boyfriend allowance.
So you need to declare all the sources of income. That is very important because you're going to pay the correct amount of tax you have to pay because you have declared the correct amount of income. But you should remember you also include whatever the expenses that were incurred to generate such income. Even from that, any other, you also include whatever the expenses that you had you have to go through in order to generate that income. So it's very important to declare all the sources of income. To be on the safe side. Hi, ba mkhafisa sa ha re bona ditaba tsa hao nna ntse di eme hantle. Nako e nngwe so bona fela kgwebo e hola. Bo. Ha re sheba ditlaleo tse motho eno a di tlisitseng, we don't see hore na TK o khonne jwang. Because ya rona re tla tseba jwang it's something else. Re tlo tseba ka wena.
Sure.
Lifestyle. Tjhelete ya hlaba. So we are going to know hore na hantle hona le ntwe sa etsale. So it's very important to ensure that whatever you do, whether you're in business, you're an individual or a company, ensure that you comply with all tax laws. Money laundering and everything. Yes.
You declare all the sources of income, I get. But you keep saying in generating this income, you carry the expense
Yes.
So how important more ke dungweletso hore ke le individual ke le motho wa business ke le that, are there allowable expenses ke reng hore ke fumane income na 10,000 ke la ka incur the expenses tse e le ona re bua ka the source documents tsa hore ke rekile stock ka etsang. So in terms of the expenses allowed, mokhafisi ha sheba ditshenyelo tsa ka, what happens there?
bohlokwa haholo. Everything that we do, it's molaong. Le taba ya allowable and non-allowable deductions is there in the Income Tax Act. That is why it's very important even for our clients to ensure that they sometimes visit our act just to be there to capacitate themselves so that at the end of the financial year, ha re tle ka taxable amount e fapaneng. O re ke tlameha ho kgafa hodima bokana, rona re ra, it's not like that because you included some of the non-allowable deductions. So ho bohlokwa hore re di tsebe. I think we are going to need the whole session just to go through each and every deduction that may be allowed and those that are not allowed. It's quite ke presentation e nngwe hape ke kgolo e felletseng. But ho bohlokwa for the clients to understand that they need to know the allowable deductions so that they include them to when they calculate their profits or the taxable amount. Also, they should be able to know those that are not allowed so that they do not include them. The financial statement in RSL, but for their business, well and good for accounting purposes, they can include such expenses. They need to improve, guy. But for Mkhafisi,
I appreciate hore ke session e nngwe and
Yes.
I agree ke session e nngwe e fapaneng. But ho ha o ka re fa mohlala or an example ya tse pedi tse tharo se re reng okay fine Tukiso sebetsa TK Financial Wellness, I'm a business owner. Akere so hore ke kgone ho etsa mosebetsi wa ka ke tlhoka ho reka laptop.
Yes.
Akere kapo ke tlhoka ho tshela koloi ke tloye hae ke tle mosebetsing ke na le workshop e ke tlhokang ho etsa RSL. So ke tlo office monana ke ya RSL e Mohalesuku ho etsa workshop e nono. Ha ke tshela petrol ho etsa workshop e nono hore ke fumane payment e patalang ke RSL.
Yes.
Does that qualify as an allowable deduction? Kapo how ka fa mohlala fela hore re utlwisise hore na as a business owner what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Re shebe tsena tse gore they are not allowed, re qale ka tsona. Any personal expenses ha di a dumellwa for tax purposes. E le hore if you decide as a businessman that you're going to take some money from the business and pay for the school fees, bana ba tlameha ya sekolong, we understand. But yona nthwane eo ntate a bileng hore o ikgodise so that you'll be able to cater for such expenses. Molao ha o dumele hore o so hlaisa 10,000 mona ya kotara ya ngwana hore ha ba neneng ya school fees sa ngwana hore you paid this much from the business income. E nngwe e ka ba taba ya di fines and penalties re le sitse le rona re sebetsa ka molao. If you did not renew your license, ke mohlala fela trader's license ka nako because we beetse nako akere, and then you find that you have to pay even more than you were supposed to pay. It is expense eo keneng ho yona ya business. You can show it by can study accounting tsa hao, but for tax purposes ka nete ha re kgothaletse ditlolo tsa molao. Therefore, we are not expecting to see the fines and penalties as part of the deductions tso reng o kene ho tsona for that. Kapa o so kene lebilong o tatile tender ke ena wa tshwarwa. O so tlameha hore o patale. Ha ra di lebella hore di hlahetla sa the financial statement tseo re reng di tlo tla di kgafiso. Those are some of the donation, unfortunately, tseo re tse sa in dispotsing ka nete hae baneneng. At some stage, you were able to give back to the community.
Sure.
So let me just give mohlomong setsi se itseng sa batho ba enang le bothata bo itseng. Well and good, but unfortunately, they are not covered ka hare ho molao, but only those related to sports.
It was not how we're having a conversation with a friend of mine because that's sports. Okay. So how about our donation to sports? Is there specific sporting codes? Tse dingwe le tsweng kapa ke di sport kaofela. Ke etsa mohlala TK Financial Wellness re ha re sebetsa hantle selemong senana. Re batho ba we are very passionate, so is very passionate about to palama di-bicycle, right? So if I donate to sporting to cycling in a sport, would that qualify as an allowable deduction? Kapo ke tlhoka ke re ke sponsor a soccer fela.
Ya bohlokwa ha se soccer fela. In short, ya bohlokwa ke hore we should understand the process. You don't just go and donate to any sports code you need to follow the right procedure. Ya bohlokwa ke hore whether it's an athlete, but they are through LSRC. E leng bane ba ikarabelang ditabeng tsa di-sports, so that you see na whatever or whoever you want to sponsor, is it registered class sa bona na? Then you fill up those forms. That is the procedure. You don't just wake up one morning so feel like you football club yena na ya motseng ke bone ka bana di ball o so ba reketse di ball. How it's usually, you need to follow the right procedure so that when you claim such expense, you will be able to provide even the evidence e leng yane e tswang kae LSRC mane jwale ba o bontshitse hore e hle motho ena o ka mo sponsora ho latela list yo re nang le yona ka mona ka hare ho rona ya di sport code tse bang kana le tsona.
So maybe at least have a go hantle. So officer mo gafisi ere ntho ngwe le ngwe e etsang o hlokwa fane ka bopaki
Yes.
ba go entse ntho eno ha ba ke entse business ke fana bokanana o fana ka bopaki ha ba ke fana di expenses e itseng, they first have to be within what is allowed ka molao.
Yes.
But also ba o fana ka bopaki ba o bontsha hore e hlile ke entse ntho eno e se here say
And bopaki ke form eno fela
Ke form
tswang
eno e
LSRC
bontshang
when it comes
ntho
to
sports.
the sports.
Okay.
Yes.
Jwale ho na le tukiso e le motho wa business. So ke bona hore I can it. From a TKO financial wellness, so we must plan for retirement. So tukiso ke le employee at TKO financial wellness. TKO e sebetsa hantle ke re TKO ha nke 2,000 to kgwedi nngwe le nngwe e contributed to tukiso's retirement. Ke le motho wa business.
Yes.
Would that be allowed or not?
What happens is, as generally as employees, yes, there are pension contributions that may be deducted either from our salaries or the other contribution that is made by the employer towards building the retirement benefit for such an employee. So from our side as employees, what should happen is such contributions should be made from the salary that has not been taxed, because it's going to be taxable at the retirement year. Yes. So even the contributions that were made by the employer towards that they are going to be ntho e tsahalang ke hore pele wa go hana le TKO consultants re lebeletse gore TKO consultants re jwetse gore re na le tukiso ene le employee ya rona o sebeditse le rona for so many years and remuneration ya hae ne le bokana for all these years. RSL, please re sebeletse gore na o tlameha go gafa bokae, because e gafa at the end of the employment contract. So that is where we are going to check gore na is it taxable or not. And in most cases ho latela ke kgola molao o ileng wa feta ka 2012 ufumana hore there is an exemption ye banteng mono, and most of the people tend to believe hore the benefits tseno ha di gafe, they are taxable.
They're taxable.
Empa ile hore they may fall within the exempt amount.
Which is luckily in the next episode re tlo bua ka individual income tax, so re tlo kena tabeng tsena ka dikateng tsa teng in totality, you know. O gola for me potso ena that though I secretly the gun ne ke botsa from a TKO perspective like I see ya individual e seng ya tukiso. So TKO e contributor in a expense in we are contributing towards tukiso's retirement contribution.
Salary
high. Well, it is part of salary high fringe benefit on the other side. But who took is who TKO, it's like expense. I guarantee we be creative. Business we try to be creative. So sekefana ka di documents say yang office ya mo gafisi. Ke bontsha gore retirement contributions for tukiso mo known. Would that qualify as an allowable expense ho mkhafisi?
Yes.
Okay, ke fana ka 2,000 to the cycling club mo ke itseng ha ke se supporta Lesotho sports and recreation committee ha ke na bopaki bo no. Second expense hlaya mono ko re tukiso jalo TKO jalo e patetse 2,000 e hlayang e le retirement contributions
just like
the salary.
Yes,
so in the second re manole those expenses that are allowable and non allowable
re tla boemong ba company.
Yes.
Re lebeletse go tla hlahisa all those expenses including tseno tse ba mohlomong o kene ho tsona towards your employees tse ba mohlomong e ka ba ke di-fringe benefits le tsona, you can also include them. Jwalo ka re include le di-salary fela. Yes, o ka di kenyeletsa wa bontsha hore this is part of the expenses as a company. Yes.
Okay. No, that's very good. Ogola potso engwe ke batlang go e botsa based on taba tsa ntate Mokotedi. Ko hore na re le batho ba di-business, how important is it to compile these documents? You know, hangata, and I asked this because nakongwe previously hona le 3 sets of financial statements. Okay, hona le the actual business financial statements, hona le yang office ya mkhafisi, hona le yang banki. You know, so how important is it hore re keep an actual accurate set of financial statements, couple of records of the business?
It's very, very important, TK, because how ka wa sheba the stakeholder re fapane, but all working towards a common goal. E leng mohwebi ena. Mme re lebeletse hore as a businessman, ebe o comply with all its tax laws, kapa ho boloka dibuka hono, kapa le bona ba bankeng ba tseba na tle be ba hlokang for you hore o qetelle ge o compliant. And if you don't have the accurate bank statements, or you don't have the accurate financial statements, it says you forgo some of the benefits that you may need to grow your business. How sa comply le taxman, it says how lot of mana tax clearance, and wa hloka as a taxman for mabaka a fapaneng, because la ha o ya bankeng mane ba tlo batla tax clearance, and ba tlo batla le tsona di financial statement, so that they know hore na ba dilana le motho wa le the status sa kgwebo ya hao. So if you have your financial statements tse yang aga se dire negative, selemo le selemo wena o entse loss selemo le selemo, jwale kwena na so hloka tšhelete bankeng to grow your business, o tla o entse profit. That is why at some point ba tlo tla ba batla the financial statement that you submitted to RSL, just to ensure hore yona the 3 sets yela yena re bua ka yona at least ke be a qetella e ba teng, e be ya le di accountants ka mosi, because ke bona ba re preparelang most of the time ke bona ba ka retsetsang dibuka. So ha eba hona le mo atlatla a bontsha o entse loss, hona le mo atlatla a o hlaha o entse profit because you need some cash ho tlo hodisa kgwebo ya hao. It says le motho yeno a ntseng a etsa dibuka, the 2 sets or 3 sets le yena
questionable, and it speaks to the ethics in the day you're doing the right thing.
Yes.
Happy that always fascinates me is previously it was deemed to office RSL kikoko. Okay, and over the last few months, years, we start to see a more humane RSL, as in a layer itla. How important is it for us batho ba dikgwebo le individual hore ga tamela office ya khafiso re be le dikamano tse ntle, re ska ra tshaba gore ha re bona RSL re ne rena yo tax. How important is it for us to change perception ya rona?
I think it goes back to us as RSL, because hore be le qeteletse le re tshaba ke nana mabaka a teng. So that is why as RSL, re bileng re leng RSL as we speak, Revenue Services Lesotho, ho tloa kae Lesotho Revenue Authority, man mo re neng re etsa ntho ngwe le ngwe just to enhance taba tsa molao, re sa tsotelle hore na ho etsalang ha fela re entse se molao. So now with all these changes, there are so many changes tse etsahalang mosebetsing man. RSL e tla ka dintho tse ngata just to try and provide efficient service, so that people perception yane e change, because bona ba tla dula ba re tshaba until rona re feto, and which is, I think we are trying.
No, you're doing very well. I must say so myself. You're doing very well.
That's
I think
nice.
In terms of in terms of social media engagement, in terms of initiatives, in terms of digitizing services, in terms of Ntonya TKO ke tlhoka tax clearance ha ntse ka di teng kaofela ke khona hore ke di etse ke patala ke fete.
Yes.
So in terms of that I'll definitely say it on camera on my Man Adventures podcast where RSL keep it up, we need more. We need
more is coming.
More is coming.
Because kanete re tlhokometse boemo bono hore as re le RSL re le koko, it doesn't work for us. That is why re tjena ka wena. Ihle ho jwalo, we cannot do anything kantle ho mokgashi. So we need to have a very good relationship le mokgafi wa rona, even in the any case o bonahala mohlomong this client wa re kolota. We don't just go there and shut up the business and everything. Re tlameha jwale re dule fatshe, come forward, re bue na, how best can you pay this? Re na le di-agreements tseo re ka ra di etsang, e seng tabane ya hore re be koko wa patala kapa re a kwala, wa patala kapa re rekisa hona to recover the tax liability o nang le yona. Ka nnete, at least o so le paki, o so bile o pakile for that matter.
I didn't get paid to say that. I didn't get paid to say that.
Leka, and we are hoping or in few years time go tla bo se e seng ntho mana hore ha koloi ya re se le feta mona ebe o re ba le ga ke.
I think so as we close this episode, with many more coming, where we're going to talk about individual tax, company tax, tax for partnerships and trusts, and customs and excise. You know, we have a jam-packed program in partnership with Revenue Services Lesotho for the next few years. Hokwala, this episode for today, where we're speaking about record keeping, but also allowable and non-allowable deductions. Session that's in there.
It's very important just to provide education, awareness about the basic record keeping, the importance of keeping the records. E bohlokwa haholo, e o thusa hore le nakong eo rona from a re le bakgafisi re tsebe hore o tlotla o kgona hore o etse dibuka tsa hao ka nako, mme o bo patale ka nako to avoid the consequences tsa ho etsa ka mora the due dates. Mme e bohlokwa hape go heseng le boemong ba kgwebo fela, peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
Ha hona ntho e monate jwalo ka ha o dutse mona o tseba hore ntho tsa hao they are well organized, they are in order. Anything e ka hlokuwang ke mang kapa mang, it's readily available and well organized such that a ka kgona le ho e bona le ho interpreta ka tsela e batlang le bobebe. And ha ona le peace of mind, le decisions tso tlo dinka hangata ho feta hanyane o tla bona hore di ba le positive impact businesseng ya hao. Yes.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first episode of 5 in partnership with Revenue Services Lesotho, where we are helping you with all the knowledge, all the nuggets, all the expertise that you need to make sure that you are prepared for the filing season that begins on the 1st of April 2025 all the way up to the 30th of June 2025. Not only do we have RSL in the building, we have LIA, Lesotho Institute of Accountants, because we are partnering on this journey with you so that we can grow our businesses, we can comply. And whether you are employed or not employed, whether you're in business or not in business, as long as of money income, you do have an obligation and a responsibility to declare and comply and file your tax returns. So over the next few episodes, we're going to talk about individual taxes, we're going to talk about company taxes, and so much more. So I encourage you to leave all your questions below, because the more questions you ask, the more empowering the conversations will be, because so that I get so your comments, your engagements, your concerns are very important so that we can address them and help you make informed financial decisions and to comply. This episode was also proudly brought to you by TKO Financial Wellness, and of course a big shout out to my creative team behind the camera, Maseru Photography, and of course Biza Street, but also to the team at TKO Financial Wellness for always making this happen. This is available on the TKO Consultancy Network. Yes, there's a lot of TK everywhere, so keep up and stay in tuned. We will see you in the second episode where we're going to talk about individual income tax. Cheers.